Moving on to two other options for the translation of Bereshit 4:7. While Gutnick, reflecting Rashi's commentary, focuses upon repentance, accountability, and free choice, the Kaplan translation also struggles with the wording of the pasuk, and it appears that the focus here is primarily upon sin. Kaplan takes note of the opening word of this pasuk, halo. The hey is a hey hashe'elah, a letter that introduces a question, and Kaplan takes the opening stand as a rhetorical statement. He also reads a more traditional interpretation into the word se'et, linked to the nun shin aleph shoresh, to raise, in this situation, being given a special privilege. Halo im tetiv se'et, if you do good, will there not be a privilege? But if you do not do good, sin is crouching at the door. Petach, in its common usage, an opening to a building. It, sin, lusts after you, but you can dominate it. Hirsch breaks the pasuk into 3, not 4 stanzas. The focus here is not sin, but the function of sin. In other words, in response to the question as to why God created the Yetzer Hara from the very outset, the opening statement is, see whether you will use your position of privilege for good or not for good. In other words, you have free choice to move in one direction or the other. Sin lies at the door, its urges toward you, and the purpose for the creation of sin is that you should master it. Before concluding section 2 of this sikha, one final point, and this relates to the relationship between sin and what within Judaism has been termed the Yetzer Hara, and in Christianity and Islam the Satan. Two terms are very often used interchangeably. One, Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, and Yetzer Ra, an evil inclination. Yetzer Hara implies an independent entity, whereas Yetzer Ra points to an inclination to do evil within the individual. The term can be traced to Sefer Bereshit and the story of the Mabul. It is used twice. The first prior to the Mabul, where in Bereshit 6:5 God states, Kol Yetzer Machshavot Libo Rak Ra Kol Hayamim. Man is basically evil to the point that he has allowed the world to become corrupt. And then a second time, in somewhat modified form, after the flood, when God appears to be remorseful over the mass destruction of mankind, he makes a commitment never to bring such destruction upon the world. Ki yetzer lev ha'adam ra minu orav. That embedded into man is the inclination to do evil, and this inclination comes minu orav, possibly at birth. Amongst the Midrashic literature, we have statements that point to the Yetzer Hara as being an independent outside force bent on controlling man. There are also other statements that suggest that the Yetzer Hara is part of man's internal structure and sits alongside the Yetzer Tov. Overall, though, the Yetzer Hara is not a demonic force, but rather man's misuse of things that the physical body needs to survive. Therefore, the need for food, when abused, becomes gluttony. The need for procreation, also, when left uncontrolled, becomes sexual abuse, and so on. The idea that humans are born with a Yetzer Ra, in other words, where one's physical needs become evil, and the Yetzer Tov begins to assert itself much later at Bar or Bat Mitzvah stage, can be traced to a source in the Avot de Rav Natan, Perek 16. In Judaism, there are some forms, both ancient and modern, that recognize the existence of a supernatural evil, independent of the person. This, however, is merely a personification of evil, distinct from the supernatural Satan of traditional Christianity and Islam. As a general rule, Chazal has a tendency to demythologize Satan, as can be seen in statements in Masechet Baba Batra. And with this, we'll bring to a conclusion part 2 of the Rebbe's Sikha to Parshat Bereshit. In part 3, the Rebbe demonstrates how Rashi's interpretation and understanding of Bereshit 4:7 is reflected in the world of halacha.